Hello, greetings, and welcome to Kitchen Party. I'm going to unmute these lovely people. If you can unmute yourselves, go ahead. Yay. So, anyone who has not watched this before, welcome to Kitchen Party, the show where Jared, in the lovely city of Seattle, cooks something that takes about 2 hours to cook, and something elaborate, usually, and ambitious that he has not prepared before. So it's an adventure, usually, and it's an adventure with a happy ending of some kind.
Wow.
We'll see. This is reality TV. It's not scripted. So we'll find out. And while he works on that, I mean, we'll be checking in with him and watching him work on that. But there's generally a lot of baking and chilling and cutting and what have you. And in the downtime, we will be hanging out with the other three lovely people on this screen and chatting. And so it'll just be like hanging out in Jared's kitchen and talking while he works on an elaborate recipe. And that's why we call it Kitchen Party, even though, in fact, we are in different countries, different parts of the world. All right. So first of all, I'm going to go around and get everyone to introduce themselves. Jared needs little introduction, but say hi.
Hello.
Who are you, Jared? Anyway, where are
I
you?
ask myself that all the time.
Who are you? Yourself and nameless.
Yeah. I'm Jared. I am on the Megaphonic Network as a host of By the Bog Butter, our Tolkien podcast. Also an artist and habitual tweeter.
Chloe, hi.
Ooh, that's hard to follow, Jared. Hi, everybody on the interwebs. I wish we were all in the same kitchen right now, but I have to say I'm myself based in Toronto, and I work by day and sometimes by evening as a user experience designer at a tech company here, and actually currently in my first semester teaching the same thing, user experience design, at York University. Also an avid cyclist, but I guess we'll probably talk about that later.
Oh, yeah. Dylan, hello.
Hello. I too am based in Toronto. Let's see. I am editor of a magazine called Spacing Magazine about urban issues. I also have been a walking advocate for a long time, as well as I cycle too, but a lot of my advocacy work has been based around walking. And in my spare time, I am a copy editor and also sometimes write history.
And Jess, hello.
Hey, I too am in Toronto, and I know some of the Megaphonics people from being a fellow Tolkien fan or fellow cat lover. There's like a whole bunch of points of connection. I make my living as head of research for the Old Books New Science Lab, which is a temporary position, which is very fun. And yeah, in my off time, I'm a huge nerd. It's just,
yeah. I think you're in good company here.
mm-hmm.
The pastry cam, in case you're wondering, anyone viewing this is wondering, is not a separate person. It's the camera that Jared is going to be using too. That's his hand right there. I was saying there's something kind of disturbing about the way that his hands are moving in like a different sync in the two different screens. Like his hand is disembodied in some way. So it's Cousin It. It's the Cousin It cooking show.
I mean, this is only our second time using it, and I don't think either of us are really used to it yet. So I keep seeing my hand move, and I'm like,
what is that?
Stop it. You'll find it a little strange. We never see Jared's hand and Jared in the same place. It is like the Barrow Downs thing. Like,
yeah.
The what?
Well, so like there's this whole scene that's in the Lord of the Rings, which is never like shown, where like they fight a bunch of zombies, and it's so good. It's just like incredibly cool. But there's this like disembodied hand that like is planning to kill like Merry, Pippin, and Sam all at once, and
with one sword.
With one sword. And it's like it's sort of the disembodied hand of like a I don't know how you describe them, like exiled Numenorian sort of situation. I mean,
yeah.
Anyway, it's very cool and dramatic.
Basically a lich, I think, in D&D terms,
Yeah.
I want to say. So.
Yeah, but this
Lord
is
of
like
the Rings and zombies.
this would be a cooking lich in this
I'm the
situation.
pastry white.
Yeah.
Okay, Jared, I'm going to put you on the big
We're
screen.
off to a flying start.
Woohoo!
Um,
What are you making today?
well,
in
first
your
of all,
kitchen
I
in Seattle?
realized my necklace matches my magnets. I just
Oh,
want to point
nice.
that out because it's been distracting me this whole time.
I was saying I love that necklace because it does. It's like you found this necklace in a thrift shop and it somehow exactly fits your aesthetic, which you have just proven once again. So
Yes, I mean these magnets that I never play with, they're always right there. Anyway, making vol au vents.
vol au vents.
Yeah.
What is vol au vent French for, Jared?
Yeah, I can't remember. It's like a breath of wind or something
Yeah.
like that. So I'm making the puff pastry. I've never made puff pastry like most people who dare to use it. They just buy it. See, the first recipe, I mean, every recipe I've looked at, the first step is, or the second step is like chill for 1 hour. So we'll see
Check it out.
if I can do this in the
Krista, this is Jared's sister. I dropped in a Lord of the Rings talk. Wouldn't have expected anything less.
And then once they're baked, I'm gonna have 2 different fillings. I'm gonna make a smoked salmon and cream cheese one, and a custard and raspberry one. Vanilla custard and raspberry one. I feel confident in the fillings. The pastry, I'm less sure.
So what exactly does making puff pastry entail? Do you have to like roll it out in layers? Is it that kind of thing? Or is
Yeah. There's a couple different kinds, which this is everything I'm about to say. I've learned from watching the Great British Bake Off on repeat for years. So if you've heard this all before, that's why. There's full puff, which is just like you take a block of butter and you hammer it out into a thin sheet, and you do the like folding and the rolling and the chilling, and then the folding and the rolling and the chilling, and you just do that until you've built up layers of butter and dough. The one I'm going to be doing is more of a sort of a cheat kind, where you grate the butter in and roll it out, and that's like a rough puff, but you still have to go through the folding and the rolling and the chilling, and it still takes kind of as long, but at least you don't have to sit there and beat some butter into a thin sheet. I didn't feel like doing that on camera.
Exactly how much butter is in this thing?
A cup,
Oh,
which is, I mean, it's not like a ton.
Yeah.
Yeah, the butter just, you want to get it in these thin, really thin pieces or sheets, depending on the version you're making, so that in the oven, the steam will puff up and push the layers of dough apart, and then you get the flakes. I've made pie crust that turned out fine. I've made other things with a similar theory that turned out fine. But, you know, puff pastries are legendarily difficult. So
what can go wrong with the puff pastry? What are the risks that you face?
It won't rise.
Okay.
I'm pretty confident I can get everything mixed together. But if you don't get the layers right, it can end up being just like pie crust, which wouldn't be super pleasant, I think. But
taking the puff out of the puff pastry.
yeah, just be like a short crust or whatever it's called. So. But we'll see.
So I feel like a buttery short crust is as worst case scenarios go, is, you know, better than a slap in the belly with a wet fish, as the saying goes.
Wow. Yeah, the only thing is, like, part of the risk involved here is that you don't necessarily, I certainly wouldn't know whether or not I've got it right until it's in the oven.
Right.
So
yeah.
if you know ahead of time that you've got pie crust accidentally, you can plan ahead and use like little muffin cups or whatever and get like, you know, little canapé things. But if you don't know that, and I won't, put it in the oven and get just little slabs.
Little slabs. All right.
Weird cookies or something.
Do you want to? Are you gonna start in a way that would be like visually interesting for us to watch here? With
I mean, I don't know how interesting this is going to be, but we'll see.
Already super into this. Look at that progress.
Yeah.
You're so much closer now than you were before. Oh,
well,
yeah.
he did all the measuring in advance.
Amazing! Look at this.
Like goals and
like dedicated little teacups. Like
yeah. So I have so many of these.
Oh,
we have the the Northwest Tea Festival happens every year in
Oh.
Seattle.
Ooh.
Not so much recently, but and they give out these little sample
Perfect.
teacups.
That
So you
is
can
so
walk around
classy.
and sip from all the vendors and everything, and you could take them home. And I have a whole stack of them, and I use them at least once a month just for this.
Yeah.
Put all my little ingredients in.
What is it? The mise en chef or
Mise en
mise
scène.
en scène.
No, that's mise en place. Oh my god.
Mise en place.
That is a film term.
Yes, that's what I was thinking, but I wasn't. But then I was like, mise en chef isn't right either.
Chris is gonna yell at me for that.
The chef is
Probably.
me.
The chef is you.
The recipe says to grate the butter into the flour. I have already cheated and grated it ahead of time to save time. So I've had a bowl of grated butter in my freezer for an hour.
That looks so appetizing for some reason. I guess because
It really does.
It
It does look like cheese. But you
Yes.
know that if you ate it, it would just like melt deliciously in your mouth. I don't know.
Yeah, the fact that butter tastes good all by itself is like one of those dirty secrets.
Mm.
I remember reading.
confirmed that it looks like cheese.
Nice butter.
Oh yeah, Oriana is a fellow Tolkien podcaster.
Hello.
I remember reading an article about people recreating bog butter,
Huh.
and
You're gonna have to explain what
apparently-
bog butter is.
Important question. What is bog butter?
bog butter is butter that has been buried in a bog for some span of time. It gets dug up occasionally, and it's really old and cheesy and weird. But you can also just make it on purpose.
All right. Follow-up question. Why would you do that?
So it helps preserve it because of the I think the tannins or whatever in the bog keep it from spoiling.
Is it like a really fine, complex cheese, like a blue cheese?
Well, that's so when these people made it to see what it was going to be like, and it ended up being like a cheese, like one of those, or maybe sort of like a cultured butter, you know,
one of those French cave cheeses.
Yeah,
made by monks. Yeah.
But the reason I brought this up is they collaborated. I forget the actual researchers what they were. I think they were just culinary historians or something. But they were collaborating with a butter maker who said that traditionally when you're making butter, or when people were making butter, they would just, it's kind of an all-day process. They would just eat the butter and survive on that for a day.
Oh, wow.
Of the calories.
Yeah. Oh, my Lord.
Oh, what am I doing?
Just skip everything else in the butter delivery process and get to just cut to the chase and eat the butter.
Yeah.
So is this cold water? I would imagine.
It should have been, but I forgot until just now when you asked. So I think it's slightly warm. That was a mistake. Maybe I've got some ice.
But the butter was very cold. It was in the freezer.
The butter was frozen, but butter melts really easily.
I'm going to do this, and we will continue to watch you do that. Unless something really exciting is about to happen. This is
This is just mixing it together until it turns into pastry. So
okay.
It'll get exciting once I start rolling.
Excuse me. All right. So in that case, I think we will progress to. I was going to start by asking Jess about her work. She's muted now. If you could unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Hi. So, you are working on a project. I had a vague idea of what you were working on, and then I was talking to Chris about this, and he was like, "Oh yeah, you have to ask her about Old Books, New Science, and the Book and the Silk Road." And these are very intriguing sounding titles of projects that you're working on. So, do you want to give us a rundown of what these are?
Yeah. Okay. I'll tell you all about my different clubs. So the Old Books, New Science Lab was started, going on like probably 8 or 9 years ago, maybe at this point. And it started off as a place where grad students who belonged to a particular professor at U of T, Alexander Gillespie, would sort of come and talk about their projects. And it was basically a place where we could meet weekly and eat snacks and talk about our research. But then it started to get more people involved, and then we started those people who came in started getting grants. And so for the past 2 years we've been working on a really large collaborative project with like, I don't know, $1 million US or something like that, funded by the Andrew Mellon Foundation with like co-principal investigators, Alex and Susanna Bari at the Institute for Advanced Study and Sean Meikle at the University of Toronto Libraries. And basically we've been, the purpose of it was to try to sort of find a new way to tell the story of like book history, because the way that book history is often told is sort of, first there were tablets and then there were scrolls and then there were like parchment books, and then Gutenberg like had a brilliant apple fall in his head and invented the printing press, and then the internet appeared and everyone celebrated and everything is now good. And like we have become increasingly modern throughout history, and now we are all enlightened. But our project has been, I mean, obviously that isn't really how things went down. And also that completely ignores everything that was happening literally everywhere else in the world at all times.
I found, just to interject, that the fun thing about knowing historians, and especially medieval historians, is that they're always like, everything you know is wrong. Everything you think you know about this period in history, totally wrong.
Yeah,
so
it's like Luke Skywalker says, like literally every word was wrong. But yeah, he wouldn't be a good medievalist. Anyway. Yeah, so basically our job was to try to sort of make friends in these different in different fields and try to sort of see what kind of image of book history sort of shows up when you all like work together. And I'll give you like a random little example. We have a project right now on a sheet of paper that is currently in the Raw Museum, though it will not be so for long, which is something I'm going to tell you about, which
Royal
is
Ontario Museum for the non-Ontarians.
Yes, the Royal Ontario Museum. And it is basically a festival poster from the Ghost Festival in 947 Common Era, the 15th day of the 7th month of the 4th year of the Great Jin Dynasty in the Kaiyuan period. And basically this guy, Tsai Yan-zhong, who is like the governor of the city of like Dunhuang at the time, which is sort of the last city in Chinese territory and like heading into the Silk Roads. And he was like, okay, I'm just going to sponsor this festival. This poster has been created so that, you know, the city may enjoy peace and prosperity, and like people will stop being bandits will stop attacking the roads, and like diseases will disappear, and like everybody just have a good time. And he made like 2 of these different posters, and it's sitting in the ROM. And so we've been like looking into what kind of story emerges when you look at all the different copies. So, okay, I didn't even tell you the coolest thing, which is that happened in 947. Prints off 1 million posters. They all go up around the city. It's great. Then,
I want to go to the Ghost Festival. It sounds lit.
It continues to be lit because it continues to be like really, really major festival in Buddhist countries. And so then 50 years go by, and the paper like acquires something similar maybe to the quality of like an Audrey Hepburn poster for us. And then it gets sealed into a cave along with like 50,000 other documents, which then survive for 1,000 years. And then, you know, Western explorers come along and open the caves, and then like all these things scatter around the world because of colonialism. But like, it's so interesting. Anyway, like, I love the image of just this random snapshot of like people at the time just like mass printing out like a poster. And I mean, it's a devotional print, really. Like in this festival, like you gain merit by making multiple copies of a devotional object or copying out scripture or whatever. So this prayer for the good wishes of the city is a way of him accruing merit himself. But still, it's so cool. And like I'm sorry, I'm going on this page for so long, but like all these different copies of this thing, people were like, you know what? It's good as it is, but it could be better. And so they like snip out the pictures and then they like combine them into like mass pictures of like multiple of them, or they like turn them into a long banner or whatever. And it's just this really cool image. It's a remix. And I love it. Anyway. But the end story of this is that the paper is not going to be in the ROM for much longer because it is getting put on display at the Aga Khan Museum for an exhibition that our project is putting on starting on Thanksgiving weekend. So please enjoy coming to a thing called Hidden Stories, Books Along the Silk Roads, which we have all been working our butts off for the past 6 months. And what's super cool about it is that it basically is a kind of accidental exhibition that started because the all the international exhibits have been shut down because of COVID. And so the museums, when they were like, okay, when we open, what are we like, literally, what are we going to do? And so they were like, I wonder if UMT is doing anything interesting. And so they got in touch with us and we got in touch with other people. And so it's kind of a bit of a spontaneous exhibit put on by a whole bunch of different local museums and universities. And it's really lovely. And anyway, so it's a chance for all these different museums and places to show things like this Dunhuang print that haven't been displayed in Toronto in decades. So it's a real chance to like open up the drawers a little bit and show stuff that it's been living with us all this time, which people don't know exists.
It's amazing.
And we're just like one tiny blip in the history of these very, very old, long things, which hopefully will survive another 1,000 years. So
it's true, right? You know, it's like maybe it'll be like rediscovered in another 1,000 years by another civilization. Who knows?
We can only hope so.
It sounds like time, kind of like it was like someone's time capsule. But
absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's so many things, like there's more of that than you would think that survived because people were like, you know what, we're just going to put every document we've got in here and then we're going to like hermetically seal it and it's going to be like just nobody touch it, it's going to be fine. And then it's just really
time capsule. Yeah.
Oh, that definitely would not be something I could do today. Just, you know, sealing up all of my old receipts and papers. Nobody wants to see that in 1,000 years.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not sure that they intended them to be like rediscovered necessarily, but still pretty interesting.
Do we know, like, was there a belief system where they were like headed to an afterworld or something like that? Or was this?
Oh, well, so I think from what I've been reading, so people used to think that they sealed off this cave because they wanted to protect these Buddhist scriptures and other documents from getting destroyed by like raiders. But since that time, people have like looked more closely at the events of the period and they were like, that's probably not what happened. So it might have been a little bit of a like, I don't want to say a Marie Kondo situation, but a little bit of a Marie Kondo where like they were like,
it's like self-storage. You know?
Yeah, like we have
got a storage locker.
We have a whole bunch of scriptures and other documents, and like there's even like a Hebrew prayer sheet from like Jewish travelers along the Silk Roads, and there's like Zoroastrian stuff. There's just like there's a million different really cool things, and like one possibility is that they were like, we don't actually have storage space for this anymore, so we're just going to gently stack these thousands of documents in this cave and wall it up. But I don't know. It's kind of a mystery.
Again, anyone, if any of the rest of you have questions about this, feel free to jump in. But I wanted to ask you just because I know the name of the sort of overarching project is Old Books, New Science. And how is new science like helping you uncover the secrets of the old books? Do you have any good stories about that? Like what is the latest shiny technology in the field?
Oh my God. Okay. So first off, the Old Books, New Science Lab title is a pun from Chaucer, where he says that out of old fields, as man saith, come all this new grain from year to year, and out of new old bookes cometh all this new science that men lear. With the idea that like out of old fields comes new grain every year. There's like a continuously generative property of the land, and out of old books, there's a continuous new generation of knowledge. So we called ourselves the Old Books New Science Lab before we knew any scientists, but now we know so many scientists. There's literally so many scientists in Toronto. And so one of our favorite things to do is use micro CT to look inside the covers of old books, which is so fun and cool. And actually this has a megaphonic connection. So one of my favorite scans we did involved bamboo and palm leaf manuscript that Chris Puma of Megaphonic loaned me very kindly. And what I love about it is that when you put it into the scanner, you see inside the cell structures of all these plants. And so it suddenly just like shocks you back into realizing that like the things that we make books out of also had their own lives as plants and animals and everything else. And it also just like looks like an alien, and it's just like really beautiful. But we found one of the coolest things that we found, like from a research perspective, was the first time we put a book in a scanner like this, we found out that you can see we're calling them ghost bindings, which are when you can see the impressions of a medieval binding that used to be there that has been thrown away and like replaced with a modern cover. So like old sewing holes, like the creases on the pages. It's just really neat because it opens up this whole new area where you can start to imagine what books would have looked like when they were first made, or for most of their lives before their modern covers were put on. So it's been really neat.
It's funny how this is making me think. I won't show you because my apartment is a huge mess. Actually, even the part that you can see behind me is kind of a mess. But I have a lot of books in my apartment, and most of them are secondhand. I love collecting used and secondhand books because often there's a sense of history. They'll have things like written in the margins or on the frontispiece, or they'll have been mended or repaired in some way. And this is that's like a much smaller version of what you're doing is like this really expanded version of that, like the history of these books that go back hundreds of years, and they've been and
you find the personal again and again. Open up a book and there's like a list of the person's like children and like wishes for their success. Like open up another book and like there's what's something we found? A flea that has like jumped off of somebody, or there's like a big smut. Oh my goodness. Okay, so there was a time. I'm sorry, I'll stop. But like, I was looking at a manuscript of the Canterbury Tales and reading to the Wife of Bath's tale, which is like one of the most popularly acclaimed of the Canterbury Tales, and the pages started getting like grosser and grosser, and then like I hit this page and there's like a cherry stem and like just like a bunch of food, like and it's because somebody was like reading their book and like snacking, and it just makes me
in
super
1400
happy.
or something.
Yeah, or like at any point from when the book was made to like when people were too embarrassed to do that. So anyway, so that's I love the way that like old books or like secondhand books of any kind, even our own books, sort of like keep hitting you with the like random people who used to enjoy them. So yeah. Anyway.
Do any of the rest of you have like weird or interesting things that they found in secondhand books?
That's such a good question.
My edition of Paradise Lost, or actually it's all of Milton's poems, that I found in a secondhand bookstore in Glastonbury, actually, is from like 1875 or something like that. And somebody was reading Paradise Lost around that time because of the handwriting, and got like, Satan's in the first part, and we go back to like the creation of the earth and all that. And then Satan comes back to the Garden of Eden, and in the margins, the person wrote, "Oh, thank God, it's back. It's good again."
Like you're reading the book at the same time. It's so real.
Yeah, that's right. I think I've ever seen someone commenting, like, I've seen a lot of marginalia, but not, oh good, I was scared. Or like, oh, this guy again.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, now it's the interesting person is back. The poem's
Yeah.
the poem's interesting again.
It's picking up. Yeah.
oh my God.
I disagreed. I really liked the creation sequence before Satan comes back, but whatever.
But whatever.
Whatever.
I was reading a copy of I was thinking when you were telling this about the other, like the student kind of comments that you find in books in classics, and then I was thinking back to my own student days where I was in a class of like 16th century poetry, and we were reading Sir Philip Sidney's like Astrophil and Stella. No, it was the Old Arcadia, and I had not read my stuff that day, and so I had borrowed the book from the library because I couldn't afford it. So we were like, I was turning the pages and we were like moving towards, we had to read like the second eclogue, which is like, they all take a break in this kind of novel to like have a kitchen party with a bunch of shepherds who want to read their poetry aloud, which is great. And so then I turned the page and then I screamed in class because somebody had done like a full like a torso and upwards portrait of this like really buff naked man, and from then on it became known as like Third Eclogue Man. And but like I had not, like, if I had done my work, I would have known that he was there and therefore not been surprised. So it was a double whammy of like surprise artwork, which somebody was inspired to put in this book. And like big reveal that I hadn't done my reading.
Anyway. Oh my gosh. Oh, I have a few good ones, and now I'm actually wondering if I could like rummage and get them off get a couple off my shelf. I'm gonna go look. Talk amongst yourselves for a minute. Well, Chloe and Dylan, do you have any questions about this or have stories? Yeah, go for it.
I'm happy to go before yours because I don't have the prop and it probably won't be as cool. So back when I was a student myself, always trying to get like those secondhand textbooks. I remember one from this person. They were giving me a really hard time and I had to go meet them wherever they were. And I was thinking, oh man, I have to spend bus fare to get this, but like, fine, I'll do it. And I get the book from them. Everything is fine. I'm like sort of leafing through it as I'm getting back on my way home. What's in the book that they, I guess, used as a bookmark? A Viva bus ticket. An unused one. And that's where I lived at the time in Richmond Hill. So it was perfect. I was able to use that to get my way back home.
Oh my God.
$3 off the ticket price here. It was perfect. It's meant to be.
Oh man. Dylan, I feel like you probably have encountered some things in books.
I've been trying to think. I don't have anything. Nothing's popping into mind.
It's gonna be one of those. Yeah, you'll think of it like 10 minutes. If you think of it like 15 minutes from now, feel free to interject. But yeah, I was able to find this. So there was this during the Soviet era. There were these publishing houses. There were these like government publishing houses in the Soviet Union that put out a lot of English language books that were distributed around the world. And it was kind of a propaganda thing, like everything that the Soviets did. And they did like a lot of interesting stuff. And this is a Tolstoy novel called Resurrection. And the design is often really beautiful. Like I kind of grab these things whenever I find them at book sales and stuff, because they're really intriguing. Just as objects, like they're often really well produced, but they a lot of them, like this is interesting because it's Tolstoy. A lot of them are more sort of novels about what a great guy Lenin was and things like that. But this one, so it has this inscription, and I'll just read it out loud because it's not very long, and it's in this very elegant handwriting. It's a name, and it says. Wellington, 1959, from E. Sergel, USSR Embassy, Wellington, subsequently expelled by New Zealand authorities for organizing an illegal network of communist cells and for other undesirable activities. That's what it says.
It's like the whole story there.
It's the whole story. And then I found this book. So that was Wellington, New Zealand. I mean, the book was printed in Moscow, and I found it in a used bookstore in Ottawa in like the 1990s. So yeah, the journeys that books take, even now.
You just reminded me, the edition of the French Chef cookbook that I have.
I'm gonna blow that up.
Well, I mean, whatever. I got it in a secondhand bookstore, of course, because I'm not from 1979. The inscription in the front says, Christmas 1979. Julie, this book is so that perhaps we can expand our gastronomic horizons without pursuing the same endeavor on our stomachs. Love, T. Peter.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think finding those kind of notes in cookbooks especially is really
Yeah.
interesting. I mean, I don't know if there are any further ones in the recipes themselves by chance in your book, Jared?
Not that I've seen. It's clearly been well loved, but I don't think anybody was taking notes in it.
Okay. Yeah, it reminds me, not maybe quite the same thing, but I have a cookbook from my grandmother, and it has all these different notes of things she changed about recipes. She was very good at cooking, and she made her own recipes as well. So she would definitely put it on herself to go and say, oh, this isn't correct. You have to change this.
And are they things that you like remember her making? Are they?
Oh, certainly. Yeah.
You can recreate? Oh, nice.
All kinds of things, sweet, savory. She did it all.
It's nice to have that, so you can actually like recreate the things that you liked.
To the best of my ability.
Yeah,
I'm trying to
never quite the same.
Yeah, it's not. It's my spin on them, which I'm trying to like say to make it feel a bit better. But I try to do her proud.
I inherited my mom's recipe card index, which was pretty cool. Which included some recipes from my grandmother too. So, and yeah, most of them may possibly never made, which is interesting. But you know, some of them were definitely like brought back memories of old favorites, and you know, with my mom's little handwriting. And they're small cards, right? So back then, you couldn't just like type it up in a Word doc and save it on your computer.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very precisely. And
my mom still has recipe cards that she wrote while watching Martha Stewart.
Ooh. She would just like write down what Martha Stewart was doing.
Yeah. And then that was before Martha Stewart, either before Martha Stewart had a website where you could print recipes out, or before my mom figured out that Martha Stewart had this website. So she would sit and watch and be like, okay, so for tuile, butter, and then try to remember as Martha was talking.
That's so cute.
Hang on, wait. Does that mean that cooking shows were originally for like literally teaching people how to cook things? Sorry, that shouldn't have occurred to me just now, but I always thought they were just like entertainment, like enjoy watching this racehorse run, enjoy watching this person cook.
Well, I mean, Julia Child was trying to teach. I mean, she was hilarious while she was doing it, but yeah, it was, she was instructing. And so was Martha Stewart for the most part. Although occasionally she'd get onto like Grosgrain Ribbon and Chow Dogs, and none of us cared about that, but yeah.
That's a good point, because I remember like when I was growing up, cooking shows were someone actually like making a recipe, kind of like Jared is doing, but sort of, with more stuff
but actually explaining it as they go.
Actually, like it all happening in half an hour. And it was, I don't know if the other Canadians remember Walk with Yan, which was a big one. Like a guy named Yan had a cooking show, and he would like show you how to make stuff in a walk. But it's true that like the ones now are more like the Great British Bake Off, which is great, but it's not like here is how you make a vol au vent.
Well, so I don't know if anybody here is aware, but they do have the Great British Bake Off Masterclass, where Mary and Paul would show you how to do some of the technical challenges and showstoppers and stuff.
Oh, really?
And yeah, I learned a ton from that, actually.
Is that like a YouTube thing, or?
Well, it was on Netflix in the US anyway for a while. Okay. They just took it down. I don't know where it's available now. I'm about to try rolling pastry out. Just
okay.
Oh, very good.
I have to admit, I was never really sure. Like, I knew that the cooking shows were about showing you how to do it, but I was like, how would you actually, like, obviously you can't do it while they do it. Yeah, I guess you'd have to write it all down. Like,
writing it down, and like Jared's mom. That's clearly there.
Again, like it's so easy to miss some key step, or like forget something, or anyway.
Yeah.
But I guess it's also video in a way. It's like nowadays we actually watch a video. You can have a recipe and you watch the video because you actually want to see how it's done. The recipe doesn't tell you everything. So maybe back then it would be like you watch the show and then maybe you look up a recipe, but at least you have a sense of what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, you got to see it kind of play out, which is really helpful. Now you'd go on YouTube.
Buy Julia Child's cookbook and then watch her, or watch her show than you would have.
Yeah.
Exactly. I just read Julia Child's memoirs of my life in France.
Oh yeah.
And it's fascinating. Yeah, like she took ages to figure out. The second one, they were like, you have to tell people how to make a baguette. And apparently it took her forever to figure out how to get people to make a baguette in a normal oven, because of course normally they're made in a baker.
Right.
Her first advice was to use an asbestos slab. And then it was just as people were realizing asbestos was bad, so she said second edition they had to like change that. But it actually absorbed the heat really well. Like it was, you really needed something like a pizza stone to absorb the heat, and it was perfect for it apparently. But,
wow. Better living through chemistry.
Yeah.
Jess says the first cooking show I remember seeing was the Julia Child spoof that Bill Nye had in this show. I have not seen that, but we could YouTube it later. I was just going to bust in and say that folks at home, if you are enjoying this, we are on the Megaphonic.fm Twitch channel, and Megaphonic.fm is not just a Twitch channel. It is, in fact, a podcast network. So you can go and check out that URL and find various fancy little podcasts, including By the Bywater, which is the Tolkien podcast that Jared is part of, and a bunch of book-related podcasts. If you like books, we got podcasts about books. So do check that out. Just said it was to demonstrate chemical reactions, I think. Hence the Bill Nye Julia Child connection. This seems like a good point at which to segue over to Dylan. Hi, Dylan.
Hello.
You're in the hot seat.
You're in the hot seat. I won't actually put you in like the window hot seat. I'll just let us, because actually this now might be a good time to watch what Jared is doing.
Oh yeah.
The pastry cam. Look at this.
I'm probably causing Krista immense pain.
Krista, his sister, is, for those of you who haven't seen this before, in fact, a pastry chef. So she knows how this is supposed to be done. And if she's watching this, she may be making fun of him right now, as she likes to do.
She does occasionally text me during the show to laugh at me. So.
That's proper sister behavior.
Yeah.
There we go. This looks good though. That looks like, a thing with layers. A pastry.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
we'll see.
We refrigerate. They always talk about refrigerating pastry before you do it. But how did they make pastry before refrigerators?
They. Well, hang on a second. What have I been doing?
Krista says, "Don't worry, I'm only cringing a little bit."
I will explain in a second. I'm trying to follow a recipe while doing this.
We have distracted you, and now everything is broken. So, Dylan, I feel like there's a segue from old books to what you work on. You work on a lot of things, including an interest in history, and telling us that everything we know about, I think, the Renaissance is wrong. So I was looking at your you have a Substack now,
I do.
and I'm gonna chuck that URL in the comments.
Oh, thank you. Which I just started.
Where is it? There it is. Yes. Okay. And I was looking at the most recent one, which I think is the first one, and there was some very interesting tidbits from reading that you'd been doing about Renaissance theater and also food. Actually, the food one. Do you want to tell us a bit about the things that you gleaned from the food book? Am I putting you on the spot?
Yeah,
here?
that was, well, I mean, that's the secondhand book I picked up. Was it Consider the Fork? And sometimes you pick up a book and it's just like full of fascinating things. Oh, sorry, let me sometimes you pick up a book and it's just full of fascinating things, and this is one of those books. It's a history not of cooking, but of all the equipment we use for cooking. And like the one that really stood out for me was, I can't remember which one I shared in Substack.
Something about underbites and
yes, that was it. So Yeah, so apparently for most of history, people didn't have overbites. And it was because we would tear meat and food, like meat off the bone and tear food off of things and stuff like that. And so that would this is a theory. So like it's very clear that it's not like this is completely widely accepted, but this is a theory that seems plausible. That we would tear meat, and so our incisors are actually, the purpose of the incisors is to basically grab a piece of meat as we tear it off the bone, or other types of food if we're doing that. Once we invented the fork, we didn't do that anymore. Or people could also maybe you'd use your knife and you'd like hold something in your teeth and then you cut it off with your knife and like that. So once we got the fork, we didn't do that anymore, and that was actually keeping our jaw kind of aligned. And so once we stopped doing that, we all actually started to grow overbites, and our incisors aren't aligned anymore. And the kind of proof of this is because they went back and they found indeed skulls before the fork in Europe had no overbites, and afterwards they did. And you can also see it in terms of class, because obviously aristocrats had forks first and they developed overbites first, and then gradually as forks worked their way down the population. But the key thing is that if you go to Chinese skulls, Chinese started eating with toothpicks for 1,000 years ago, chopsticks for 1,000 years ago. And indeed, you can see the same change happening when Chinese people started to chop up their food first and use chopsticks to eat. They developed overbites several hundred years before Europeans, because they weren't tearing their meat, tearing their food with their hands anymore. But I thought that so fascinating, the way that a tiny piece of technology like a chopstick or a fork actually changes our physiology, because something that we're kind of designed to do, we're not doing anymore, and our bodies start to grow in different ways. I actually just heard something today about how birds are adapting to climate change by growing bigger beaks, because I think it helps them release heat faster or something like that. And it's sort of similar kind of thing, right? Like they're actually evolving, and for us it's not necessarily evolution, it's just that our bodies just grow differently because we're actually not using certain things that we were designed for. And that book was just full of those kinds of little details, which I thought was really interesting.
That reminds me, just the idea of something that we think of as a minor shift being a technological advance that actually has a huge impact on society at the time. I was reading a while ago about how when clay vessels were first invented, like early in, I don't know, I guess this would be like Stone Age, Bronze Age, or like pre-Bronze Age. But they were, before people figured out how to fire them, they were fairly fragile. Like you couldn't just put one on the fire, it would crack and it would fall apart. So the way that people cooked things was they had to heat stones in the fire and then take the stones out, put them in the, Jess knows this and is nodding, put them in the pot, and then the hot stones would cook the food in the pot. But this is very labor intensive. You had to sit and watch the stones. You had to move the stones back and forth with some kind of implement, and they had to stir it, and it was very, it was quite fussy. And when they developed a way to fire pots, so you could actually take the pot and put it on the fire, you could in fact walk away from it and engage in childcare or do other things while the pot is quietly simmering on the stove. And this seems like this is actually a technological leap akin to the invention of the wheel or the invention of the printing press, in terms of what it allowed people to do, and it just shifted the whole state of labor, of what labor was needed, but who needed to do the labor and when and how much of it. And so it was this major shift in domestic technology. And I just that stuck in my mind, because again, it was it seems like a small thing, but it had such an impact.
That's actually in this book as well. She talks about
really?
that. She talks about pots and how you cook and the difference that pots make and stuff like that.
Okay, I want to read that book now too.
It was full of that kind of thing. It was exactly that kind of thing. So really, I didn't even know that Cuisinarts were not invented until the 70s, because when I grew up in the 70s and Cuisinarts were everywhere. It was a really quite late invention, the whole food processor thing. Before that, it took a lot longer to do stuff, and there were certain kinds of dishes that people just didn't really make in their kitchen.
Right.
Yeah.
I do. That's interesting. I remember, I think blenders predated the food processor,
Yes.
but I remember food processors being like a shiny thing that you had if your family was well to do. Like it was sort of
Exactly.
an innovation.
I just happened to curb cycle to find a food processor, my very first one ever, and I feel like my life has very much improved.
Oh,
I didn't
really?
even realize that I needed one until it found me. You know how that happens?
Okay, so that is good because I have twice. The problem with food processors is they have a lot of little fiddly bits that can get lost. I have twice bought food processors at yard sales from people who swore up and down that all the bits were there. I've gotten them home and realized that like the part that you need to attach the blade to the other part is not there. So
I'll actually never know if I have all the pieces. I suppose it's more so if you have what you need, then you have enough.
Yeah, if you have what you need, because there's often like there's more than one piece that is needed to like assemble the thing so it will actually
make
run.
it work.
To make it
actually,
go.
what's really strange is I have a couple pieces. I wish I was at home to go get them and show you. I don't know what they're for. It's like the opposite of your problem, Nadia.
No, that also happened to me, and I realized I had this one piece, and I was just like, "What is this?" And I realized that it was like a dough hook for a stand mixer. It was a piece of something else. It was
for something
that I did not have. So this is the fun thing about secondhand kitchen implements. It's like, surprise! It's a surprise.
Look at this stuff. Isn't it neat? Wouldn't you think that my blender's complete?
It's not though.
Oh my god.
But like, okay, but you have to tell us then how much time you spend cleaning the blender, because this is the reason that I've never gotten a food processor. Is like I've got a standing blender thingy, which I like, but I look at a standing blender thingy and I just feel like it would take years off my life, like cleaning out the little bits.
We got a juicer and it was great for a while, but then the amount of cleaning required it's just like no.
A juicer has to be like the number one thing. The number one thing that turns up in yard sales because people think they want one, and then they're like, you know what, this is really fun.
You want to know my life hack for cleaning these things?
Yeah.
So actually, hilariously, in my current curb cycled one, I can't do this because it's not super liquid tight. But if you have like a blender or something that is liquid tight, when you're finished using it, just put water and soap in it and turn it on.
Clever.
It won't do the full job, but it'll definitely get you a pretty good.
Speaking of like gadgets that I have gotten secondhand, this is my big curb score like a couple years ago was someone curbed a spiralizer, which is also like a classic thing that people get, and then they're like, I'm not gonna spiralize a bunch of zucchini, and then they put it out on the curb. But I actually use it a lot because it's like I've tried all kinds of different vegetables through it. This is the thing like where you put a vegetable in it and you turn a crank and the vegetable comes out spiral noodles basically the other end. But it's just like I like julienne carrots and stuff like that, and it's just a different fun way to slice up vegetables that you might otherwise be bored with, and you can make them into stir fries and whatnot. And I actually wind up using it a lot. So thanks to whoever put it out on the curb for me. And it's not that hard to clean because you just like rinse off. It's just vegetables, so it's not sticky or oily, and you just like rinse it off and put the bits in the dish rack, and you're done. Dylan, do you use a food processor a lot other than the?
No, I'm. I even there's a lot of things that I even grate by hand. I just like something about the fussiness and the preparation and the cleaning discourages me from doing that. My wife uses food processor a bit more and also other things. But I tend to avoid that and just do things by hand. So I make like grated carrot salad every so often. I'll just grate the carrots by hand, and I guess it takes a little longer and it's a little more effort, but it feels like it's less effort. It's okay. So I'm a big walking advocate, and I think it's related to whatever psychological thing makes me like walking, right? Like there's no fuss with walking. You just
Yeah.
walk out the door. You don't have to like get your bike out of the shed. You don't have to like get prepared. You don't have to like get the car keys and get
No parking. You don't have to find a place to park.
Yeah, then you're done. You're done, and you come back, and you don't have to like park your bike. You don't have to lock up your bike. You don't have to find a parking spot for your car. Like, you know, all these things. So I feel like whatever it is the weird psychology that makes me prefer just walking without having to do any fuss is also the thing that makes me want to just grate the carrot on the old-fashioned grater rather than set up the you know, the Cuisinart or whatever, the word food processor, put everything in, put it together, plug it in, go through the process, which is very quick, and then clean it up afterwards. So yeah, I feel like there's some weird psychology in my head that relates those two things.
So speaking of walking, this is a good way to like leap into that. You tell us about your involvement with you're actually part of an organization that advocates for people who walk in Toronto.
Me and some other people started a group called Walk Toronto, and we're just volunteers. So it's funny because cycling, people are really into cycling. If people are cycling, they're really advocates. So a lot of people don't really, walking isn't the kind of thing people are consciously like advocates for often. It's just something you do. But a few of us ended up actually forming this group, and we don't have any money. We actually don't have a formal organization. We just get together. We advocate for anything to do with walking. But actually we've had a really good year. So we've had like a few like things so we've been working ever since we got started on trying to get sidewalks plowed in Old Toronto. And we were told that it was impossible for years and years and years. And finally this year it went through. It's done. They're going to plow all the sidewalks in Toronto. Suddenly the thing that was impossible is suddenly somehow possible. The big thing, our big triumph this year is no exit signs. So this was a really fun. You'll notice, you know, in the old days, you get no exit signs and it just says no exit. But actually, you know, there's a park at the end and you can walk right through the park. But the no exit sign is only for cars, basically. And this is something that's been bugging me for a long time, back of my head, whatever. It's finally someone tweeted about it. And I was like, let's do something about this. And you know, the pandemic, everyone's walking around their neighborhood. Suddenly everyone's noticing, right? It's like, wait, I can walk here, but it says no exit. But if I go through, there's actually like, you know, there's a park and I can go right through, or there's a path, or there's a alleyway or something. And so I thought, let's do something about this. So my friend Sean Marshall, who's one of my colleagues at Toronto, created a map and we crowdsourced it. And we ended up with like 450 locations where it says no exit, but actually
we're still listening to you, but we're also looking at the pastry cam.
Yeah. I talked to my counselor and I tweeted her and I was like, should we do something about this? And she was like, yes. And I've never seen this actually act so fast on anything. It went through, it went to council passed it, and now all over the city you'll actually see pedestrian accepted under a no exit sign, where if you're a pedestrian you can actually keep walking. So that was a really fun thing, and it was one of the rare situations where you advocate for something and it changes really quickly. And it's been something that's bugged people for a really long time, and so that was a really fun and I feel like productive, especially in the pandemic kind of thing, where people are now walking around their neighborhoods, and now people will know you can actually get through here if you want to.
Yeah, there were a few things like that happened here in Toronto during the pandemic. Jared, sorry, I muted you there for a minute because the whisking was getting a little loud. But another thing that happened was we wound up, because people couldn't go into restaurants. We've had these sidewalk road like patios on the street, which feels very European and fun, and is another thing that I'm sure they were saying before, no, you can't do that, and now it's been happening for 2 years and people love it, and we might get to keep it.
Yeah.
I find that so interesting that, like, I was on a walk yesterday evening with my sister and her family in Leslieville, and they turned off of the sidewalk down this like quite narrow little strip that seemed to be going by a house. And I was like, that's private property. You can't go there. And they're like, don't trust us. And then, so we walked past this house into this like large, beautiful park filled with like giant willow trees. And it was clearly like that was intended to get pedestrians into this park, but it was like completely unclear unless you knew that that park was there, that was what it was for. And like there must be tons of that kind of thing in so many different cities. And yeah, it's really
I found a secret passage like that.
Hello, Bright Suzaku, by the way. Just
I found a secret passage like that, like a few blocks from my house, which I'd walked by many times. And then once, COVID walks happened, I finally walked by and looked up and was like, wait, that's not someone's like, little side lane to their garden. That actually goes to a, and yeah, it's a tiny little thing, completely unmarked. It was clearly public, and it is a link between an alleyway and this new street. So, yeah, and that I actually ended up getting a pedestrian accepted sign on the other side of it, so that people know that they can actually walk through that location. So.
So I feel like
it's funny discovering all these kinds of things. I found some other ones in Leslieville too. Like there's like a park that's basically only accessible by alleyways. Finally walked down an alleyway and I'm like, there's a park in the middle of this like interior of this block. It's really cool.
Nice. Jared, is now a good time to ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Because you are living in a part of Seattle that you had moved into not all that long before the pandemic hit. And I know you've mentioned that you wound up exploring it on foot a lot more than you had previously during the pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, I'd lived in Seattle for almost 3 years before the pandemic, and I hadn't really wandered around much. But now, with nowhere to go, I ended up exploring a lot of like parks and urban trails that are around here, and going out to the tide flats and seeing clams and things, and making friends with the kiwi ducks. Yeah.
Explain once again what a gooey duck is, because it never gets old.
A gooey duck is a very, very large clam. I think the shell can be about this big. I mean, like a mango or even bigger. The notable thing about them is that they have these very long necks that they can't retract into their shell when threatened.
Weirdly, that's how it's spelled.
Yeah. This is, of course, colonizers transcribing a native word and getting it wrong. So they're very big. I mean, they can be like, in total, at least a foot long. And they hide out in the sand near seagrass. And that all sounds maybe very cute, but they are the most phallic little things.
They look little.
They are. If you look them up, they are upsetting to look at.
They also like emerge from the sand. Like,
yeah, so I got a video of one. Because clams have to like take in water and expel it to like feed because they're filters. But if you walk along the beach at low tide in the place where they live, first of all, if you if you can't see them, you might step near them and then they'll squirt water. They're like little fountains. It's very adorable to me, not to most other people. But if you're very quiet and stand very still, you can see them poke their little heads out of it.
Proboscis. I don't know.
They like emerge from the sand. It's so gross.
They really are Cronenbergian.
I saw one a few months ago now, I think. I happened to see out of the corner of my eye come up and I went, I gotta take video. And it, extends up out of the sand. Again, it's very, very phallic. And then it kind of goes flaccid and flops over to one side. And I would never have seen that if it weren't for the pandemic. I'm so blessed to have this silver lining.
Why do they do this? I mean, what Why aren't they just regular clams? Regular clams do fine.
Why are gooey ducks?
Why are gooey ducks?
I mean, I don't know what evolutionary pressure led them to this point, but that's just how they are. There are like I don't know if they're related, but there are other clams on Puget Sound that similarly can't like completely get back into their shell, but they don't look like that. They look like they've got a little hat on. You know, they.
See, that's cute. That's the kids don't have to leave the room for those.
If you there's a Japanese grocery store in the International District here, and if you and if you go to the fish counter, they've got a huge tank of live gooey ducks. And I remember as a kid going to this grocery store and being like, "Oh, those are kind of weird," and then not really realizing anything about it until much later. Yeah, I love them. They are so disgusting.
I mean,
Have you ever eaten one?
No.
Okay.
You can eat them though. People do eat them.
Oh yeah, people.
It's possible.
They're a delicacy.
Yeah, they're in the grocery store.
Yeah. They only live in the sort of Salish Sea area, but they get exported to like Japan and everything. You can use them in sashimi. Yeah.
Very big gooey ducks.
They can actually live a really long time. I think there have been ones found that are at least 140 years old, and of course, those are the big ones.
That's
Wow.
incredible.
The tortoises of the clam world.
Yeah.
I just have to imagine that they sing to one another, though. Like, I don't think you can have like a thing that lives in the sand that doesn't like have a I don't know, a Muppet style little song and dance number when no one's looking.
So it's sort of a tube, you know. You can see them kind of like the yip aliens. They don't move that fast, but they do kind of do that when they're out of the sand. And it's very easy to picture them making little
like mana mana doo 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 mana mana doo.
Yeah, well, I was thinking of the ones that are like yip 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 yip, they're like howls. But they could also do mana mana if they wanted.
This is a truly magical animal. Thank you for telling.
The Bival Muppet Show never really took off. I don't know why.
Oh, yeah. I never would have seen them in the wild if I hadn't been
If you
forced to
hadn't
explore
started
my own
walking
neighborhood
around.
because everything is just... I wouldn't obviously have, traded that for, it's not a deal I would have made, but I'm, happy that I found this meager joy.
And shared it with us.
Yes, exactly.
Well, I mean, I feel like ever since Nadia found out about them, she asks me about them every stream so they can tell people.
You brought them
Tell a
up.
fresh
but honestly-
audience.
It's important work. Speaking as somebody who never knew about them until now, I think you folks are doing really good jobs continuing to bring them up. You need to spread the word about these creatures.
I feel, more people need to know. Having learned about gooey ducks, more people need to know about gooey ducks. Through Jared, I have learned that Seattle is just a deeply quirky place in so many ways.
Well, we live in seriously, the city is built in a really ecologically interesting area. We have these huge tide flats where, some of the indigenous peoples would just live off of the food they could gather on the beach. That wasn't preferred, but you can live off of it because there's so much biodiversity here. I think it has to do with, I want to say, somebody's going to correct me, I'm sure if I'm wrong, but the sort of glaciated landforms that we have that then filled with the sea just mixes together to produce this really fertile area. And that's why the gooey ducks are here.
They got apparently the uck part of the short seed word actually means genitals. So
yeah, the original word is something like guiduk, but I know I said that wrong, but it's closer to that than gooey duck.
Yeah. It's just it's such an odd broken telephone kind of transliteration. Oh my goodness. Well, wandering afield from gooey ducks, I was thinking
I'm gonna roll some pastry now.
do that. And I was the whole walking thing. What is this? We got this. Reminds me of orchids and what they look like at the roots. And another thing we can do a Google image search on. Oh, and Krista's full of the gooey duck facts today. A group of gooey ducks is called a bag.
I have to believe that.
Eat a bag of gooey ducks.
There are layers.
Yeah,
ish.
Nice.
Hold on.
I see layers.
Come on.
Yeah.
Lips. Yeah, layers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think it's too soft, but it's going to take them like 20 minutes to bake, so I've got to start shaping them now.
Right.
So I think ultimately half of them are going to be sort of sad, and the other half are going to be just fine.
Oh, but I don't. How sad can they be if they are filled with smoked salmon or raspberries? I mean, really.
The raspberries are for garnishing. Put jam in there, and then the custard, and then garnish with raspberries. I also got salmon caviar for the.
Oof.
Oh,
Wow.
There's nothing sad about this. I can just. I mean, the pastry casing ultimately is a delivery system.
At worst, it'll just be like on crackers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just won't be as pretty as I wanted it to be.
Oh,
We'll see.
It might be. We don't know. We don't know that yet. I was going to segue from walking to bicycling and to Chloe because Chloe, your thing is bicycling, or one of your several things. Did you do a lot of bicycling during the pandemic? Was that something that you were doing before, but was that something that kind of amped up for you?
Definitely. I'm a very much late bloomer in cycling. For some reason, I never learned to ride a bike as a kid. I decided to teach myself just before I moved out of my parents' house a few years ago. Thought, I'm going to be a cool downtown kid. I got to know how to ride a bike to the market and get my tomato and put it in the basket. So I taught myself at the end of my parents' street in suburbia, and then took to the streets of Toronto. It was quite scary, as I'm sure many people who have gone through that transition have felt, moving into a big city and trying to bike on city streets. But actually, about a couple months after I moved in on Bloor Street in the West End here, they installed bike lanes that started out as temporary on Bloor Street and now are permanent, which makes me smile every day. So yeah, definitely been cycling a lot. Through the pandemic, been cycling through the winter. It actually, I know we don't have such a terrible winter here in Toronto compared to other places, but it definitely makes winter like a lot more bearable. 5 minutes on your bike and you're already warmer than like many other people around you. So through the pandemic, I got wind of this really wonderful organization called Bike Brigade here in Toronto. And I'm not sure yet. I'm seeing some nods. Some of you have heard of them. And I've been hooking up with those folks to deliver produce and meals and different kinds of stuff to folks in need during the pandemic.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of bike marshalling in there too. Others do a lot more wonderful work on that side than I do. So I got to give them credit. But other than just the amazing joy of biking around a city and feeling so free, and if it's rush hour and you're zooming along in the bike lane and watching all the cars be, stay where they are as you zoom by. It's been really awesome to be able to use that as like an outlet for exercise during the pandemic. And thanks, Megaphonic. There it is. Bike Brigade does you. and also to be able to help folks out. And whenever I'm dropping off food, I don't it's their choice if they want to like come out and get it, or I can like leave it at the door,
right,
whenever they're comfortable, have my mask on. But on the occasions that I do get to meet some folks, it's really wonderful to sort of have a chat with them. And I never know if they're maybe like stuck inside because they can't go out to get food. And so if they need a little bit of that social interaction. So all of that has just been made so possible for me by biking. And in addition to that, the other side of social biking that I think is so great in the city here, and I'm sure in other cities too, is group cycling. So been doing a lot of stuff going around. If anybody has heard of Toronto Cruisers and Neon Riders, just a bunch of random groups. I don't know if you can even really Google them, but I can share some info later if I'm interested. To just go around in the evenings on city streets and play music and have lights on our bikes. And you might have seen some of the groups go around at night if you're ever out in the evening. And just putting a smile on people's faces as we ride by. So it's all good. It's all great stuff.
Toronto does have a good bike culture city. There's that. I know there's ArtSpin, which is like a group that goes out on bicycles and does like art crawl tours with everyone on the bike from like outdoor exhibit to outdoor exhibit. I'm just gonna look at, because Jared, you were explaining to me earlier what this was, and I couldn't picture it, and now look at that.
Well, this one's a little borked. But,
okay, but this is the origami part of the process, basically. You want to like walk us through what you're doing to these squares?
Yeah, well, let me make this one into a square first.
Okay.
Oh, I made it worse. I need a little rolling pin for this.
Right.
Aww,
It's an excuse to buy a cute little rolling pin.
I know, right? It's not a square. Who cares? It's getting warm. I need to do this. So, make it into a little triangle. Make an incision. This is going to be another borked up one, I think. And do the same on the other side. Ooh, yeah, this is super warm.
Would it help? Do you have ice in your freezer?
I have a little.
Do you have ice in your freezer that you could take and like put little? Okay.
This should be a little stiffer, but you just take one thing, fold it over the other like that, and you get a little. When it bakes, it forms a nice sort of basket thing.
I never knew that that's how it was done. I find that kind of awesome.
Yeah.
I've had a little bomb before, but I didn't know that that's how you actually created it.
I think it's so like elegantly done. Like it's like, oh, I could almost do this myself, maybe.
Well, yeah, it's really this part is so crafty.
It has that thing where I follow like 80% of it, and then you do some kind of magic with your fingers, and I'm like, I'm out. I don't understand anymore.
Well, so I made a similar thing.
Like I understand what you're doing right now. I still understand what you're doing.
Okay, so
I'm still with you.
Unfold it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you should have these little sort of flaps here, fold one over to meet the sort of far corner here.
Oh yeah.
Fold the other one over to meet the opposite corner. Tighten it a little bit, and then
black magic.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I should have put this on a plate. They need to chill before they go in the oven.
They need to chill. This is not the first time, Jared. Possibly the first kitchen party we did. Jared made manti, which is a kind of Armenian dumpling that is also tiny and elaborately folded and has a filling in it. So, so he's getting good at this.
Well, that was
right.
The manti is just literally folded in half. It's not.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're ramping up.
Yeah.
And also suggests making your own DIYing a tiny rolling pin, which perhaps not right now, but but you could do at some point. Krista wants to know how many turns you got in to make the layers.
Not enough. I know that for sure.
I wonder if that was a
say
question.
Yeah. She did already text me very nicely to tell me I was cutting it dangerously. So
dangerously.
Because apparently, so what she said.
Okay.
Repeat this for the masses. Is if you drag the knife through, you mess up the layers. So it's better just to cut straight down.
Okay.
Turns. I think I got 3 turns in, but I was also doing. So this is another bit of fun Great British Bake Off trivia that I may be putting into practice, or may have totally messed up. If you fold it like in half and then in half again, sort of, like a book sort of thing, you get more layers quicker rather than folding it like a letter, over and over, rolling it in thirds. We will see. So I think I got 3 book turns in. So I think it is going to be a little not flaky.
A little not flaky or a little flaky?
A little not flaky. A little stodgy.
But buttery. I think anything that buttery can't be all bad. And Krista says that's a good amount of book turns. So we have the Krista approval. Yeah, and Suzaka wants to know, like, who did come up with the little black basket idea? Where is that from?
Krista might know.
Anyway, Julia Child. No, it's probably older than that.
She didn't really invent anything. She was just a conduit.
A conduit of information.
Yeah.
So Chloe, do you think do you know people who got into cycling during the pandemic who had sort of wanted to try before?
Don't know if I can think of anybody particularly, but I know I just keep bugging all of my friends to get on their bikes that are all sitting in their dusty garages. So I think maybe the pandemic has, shown a lot of people, maybe given people that freedom or time or something to be able to get it on the street. I only know my own lived experience. I don't know if anyone has actual real hard facts, but it really seems like there were so many more cyclists out on the road this summer.
Yeah.
So that's been amazing.
I'm so impressed that you taught yourself biking as an adult. Like literally, that sounds incredible. How did you do it? And how did you keep doing it when you probably fell on your butt sometimes? And that would have been more painful being a grown up. How? Can you tell us about this feat of courage?
You're so nice, Jess. I don't know if it was that big of a deal, but it's so funny. My sister lords over me. She has this hilarious footage of me doing this and falling over. But I was lucky enough. My parents live on a dead end street, so just went to the end of the street and just practiced going in a circle. Fell a lot of times. I think it took me about 3 days to get the confidence to actually go in a line to the end of the street, and it was such a wonderful rite of passage before moving out, because all of my neighbors who had known me since childhood were like, "Oh, what are you doing? Are you teaching yourself how to ride a bike right now?" Okay. And some would come out to watch, but it took 3 afternoons, mostly just keeping my feet on the ground till I felt comfortable. You know what? I believe I looked up a WikiHow article. So if anyone was looking for how to learn how to ride a bike as an adult. But yeah, I did not want anybody trying to hold the back of the seat and push me or do it. I was like, no, I'm going to do this. So when there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah. Wow. Was it, how did you, there's the learning to ride the bike, and then there's the learning to navigate the rules of the road and city cycling in general. And how did you learn that? What was that process?
Yeah, you're right. It was totally two different things. So with that, I think pretty quickly from a Google search, I found ActiveTO, and they have really good resources online in terms of knowing the rules. Probably some YouTube videos. That's how I learned to drive. Don't do any of that anymore, though. Just cycling all the time or walking like Dylan. But yeah, I often will ask friends who don't cycle as much, hey, do you know the hand signals? Let me just tell you what they are real quick so that you know. And I definitely see a lot of people who don't use them, which just try to be, cautious around folks who might be a little bit newer. But really, even more so than that, I always tell people, and this is, again, just my opinion, and others may feel differently, but the best cycling experience I think you can have in Toronto is not necessarily to use the bike lanes all the time, but more so to use quiet city streets. And again, depending where you live, depending where you want to go, not always possible. I love that the lanes are there, and I think it's wonderful that they calm traffic and all those wonderful things, but personal preference, I'd rather be cycling on side streets. And so it's, I think, a lot easier to build up your confidence that way as well.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to, I have this kind of apprehensive love-hate kind of thing. I don't, and I want to cycle in the city, and part of the reason that I don't is I live right downtown in this absolutely crazy terrifying, bike unfriendly kind of morass of streets. And I think even if I lived a few blocks away, it might be more of a going concern.
I kind of went through that too. I used to bike, and then when I moved back to Toronto, it was oh my God, the streets are crazy. So I didn't bike for, I don't know, almost a decade. And then eventually I was it just seemed so convenient. I eventually bought, a city bike, and I was living right downtown too, and I was terrified for the first while, first few days, but you got used to it really quickly, and then after that, it just seemed about as terrifying as it still does.
This is saying, when I was trying urban cycling in Portland, there was a whole different set of streets that were the main streets for cyclists, which is kind of cool. It seems impossible to do that in Toronto. Yeah, Toronto is an interesting cycling situation in that it's really, infrastructurally not set up for cyclists, but it has this very strong cycling culture of people who are trying to fix that. So there's that kind of tension.
I wrote an article for Spacing once about how Toronto isn't a grid. It looks like a grid because you've got all the main streets, but actually inside, none of those streets connect properly between big blocks. So, like in Vancouver, like in Portland, it's a pure grid, and you can actually just have people biking along the streets that are parallel to the main streets. There's nothing like that in Toronto, and that's why we have such big fights about space on streets in Toronto, is because the main streets are the only ones that go in a straight line. None of the side streets actually do, and it's really hard to develop a cycling network that's not in the main streets.
Huh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. And Uncle Grangles is saying exactly.
I have cycled in Portland as well. Definitely not as much as Toronto by very far. I don't know if it still is the like Nike city bikes that are all over there. They're branded by Nike. So yeah, I think I was also riding in rush hour, so it really wasn't a very good experience that way. But I think since then, with all the skills I've picked up cycling in rush hour in Toronto, I could definitely get back to Portland and test my skills there.
Doesn't Portland have these really funny / terrifying, like, if you cycle at this moment, you might get hurt signs? Like, I have this visual memory of like an exploding bicycle street sign in, this isn't ringing a bell for any of you. Okay, I'll look it up. But
ringing a bell?
Chris might know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I relate to this thing about Chris says oh yes, the watch out for the streetcar grooves signs are visceral. So this is getting exciting. Jared, these are now they're approaching their final destination. Are you going to brush them with egg? Is that what is happening here?
Yes.
Sorry.
I didn't realize I was muted. Or I forgot I was muted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm going to, these are probably too close together. Gonna prick the insides with a fork and then brush them with egg and then bake them.
They're very pretty.
And
really
then
like
while they're in the oven, I will make fillings.
So do they have a leavening in them other than, do they have egg or baking soda?
Nope, you do not do that with puff pastry generally.
Okay. So the puffing is just happening for the moisture.
Yeah, it's just the steam in the butter.
Right.
And that's why the layers are so important.
Ah. Interesting.
Yeah. Slightly short.
Oh, sorry. The brushing. The delicate little brushing of the little kites. They do look like kites.
Yeah, these are so uneven. I would not show these to Paul Hollywood.
So cute.
Oh, streetcar grooves are something that Portland, I guess, has in common with Toronto. And yeah, I know people who have sustained really unsettling injuries.
I did not know that Portland had signs. That's a good idea. We don't have signs in Toronto warning cyclists. You just have to know to avoid them.
We should have signs.
Yeah.
Yeah. I found a link for one of the Portland bike signs, and it is indeed as incredible as I remember.
Krista just parenthetically says if you add yeast to the puff pastry, it basically becomes croissants, which could be another kitchen party at some point. I don't know. Croissant party.
Maybe, although that would have to rise for a while, and I don't know.
Yeah, it's true.
Probably doing it. I don't know.
I wonder if there's a way I can like show this image.
I just caught the image too. Yeah, that's wild.
Because it's kind of I
see one online where someone's added a crocodile at the end so that the cyclist is actually heading straight into a crocodile's mouth.
I did have quite a tumble on a bike in Portland. It was southeast somewhere, but it wasn't on a streetcar track. It was a huge pothole that I didn't see coming. So there was no sign, unfortunately. I was okay. No major injuries. But yeah, not so much.
Okay, just a minute. There we go. That's the sign. That
Warning.
does not. That yeah. You see what's. Can't say you weren't warned if that's what you're looking at. So I guess, I mean, with there's an increase in cycling, as we anecdotally see, increase in people walking around as a result of lockdown and people going stir crazy. And there's also a decrease in people commuting because we had so many people working from home. And I'm wondering if this is, and I'm putting this out to both sort of Chloe and Dylan, active transportation, which is what we in planning circles, we know, like walking, cycling, things you actually have to use your body to do to transport yourself around the city. Do you think that this is a moment, it's having a moment? Are there ways to sort of keep that going? Are there initiatives that you guys know of that are working on that?
Yeah, I mean, definitely cycling's up, and I think cycling, like my own experience, and I think like Chloe too, once you do it, you realize it's possible, it's actually really convenient. So I think that like once you get more people having bikes and riding them, I think there's going to be some kind of permanent thing. And Toronto introduced a pile of new bike lanes during the pandemic as well. So I think most of those will stay. So I feel like it's going to make a big difference long term. The other thing is that Toronto the pandemic kind of pushed Toronto for a long time. Like I live on the 4th, which is the sort of East-West Avenue in Toronto. And for a while, the problem was that like Toronto, because Toronto's downtown streets are narrow, they would always use the parking lane as a rush hour lane. And so you couldn't really put a bike lane there because the bike lane would have to shift at different times, right? It would be parked cars sometimes, and then sometimes the inside lane would be. And so basically with the pandemic, they just gave up on that idea on the Dan 4th. They're like, you know what, we're not going to have this rush hour lane anymore.
Right.
We're just going to use that for parking cafes during the summer.
Yeah, the cafes.
And that's kind of a permanent shift. It's a change in attitude of like, we need to move cars all the time to you know what, we're going to share the street. We're going to have bike lanes. We're going to have parked cars. We're going to have a car, and people are just going to have to take more time when they're driving.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where once it happens, you know, the hard thing is getting it to happen, and once it happens, then there's effort involved in shifting back. So maybe we'll be able to just keep it that way.
Well, I think people realize it doesn't really make that much. You know, it makes a big difference for cyclists, and the traffic isn't really that different. So
yeah.
It's really interesting.
We're watching, by the way, the smoked salmon filling come together here, nice. And I can just smell it from here. I just wish I could eat this smoked salmon. Jared, how exactly? I know it's smoked salmon and cream cheese. Are you going to mix them together, or just kind of like make layers, or what's the?
I'm mixing them together. I think if I can get this open. Why did I do this with wet fingers? I'm a fool. I'm going to mix them together. I'm going to see if I can reserve some cream cheese and spread it over the top for like a nice white layer that would be more garnishable. You know,
and then you can put the roe on top of it.
Yeah. But we shall see.
Like this is one of those recipes where like the worst case scenario is you have smoked salmon and cream cheese
on a tasty
buttery thing. Yeah.
Buttery crust, yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Just to add on to Dylan too, loving all the new bike lanes. I just tried out the new Yonge Street bike lane. Didn't get into too much trouble on my route. It was pretty good. But I'm really enjoying. I'm pretty sure almost everybody in this room has heard about ActiveTO. So I would say it was, in my opinion, a bit more of a success in 2020 than this year. Definitely loved using the Lakeshore West to ride my bike up and down and feeling the wind in my hair in these 3 wide lanes of traffic, or wide lanes of street, all for me.
So ActiveTO for the non-Torontonians is a program where the city was like, shutting down major thoroughfares temporarily to motor traffic so that people could cycle on them and walk on them and actually use them. And and it's sort of, I guess there was a, oh gosh. One of you guys will know, what's the program where they would shut down like Yonge Street for a day?
And Open Streets,
Open Streets, yeah.
And that.
The thing I loved about the ActiveTO was that you could bike side by side, because most of the time in Toronto, you're sometimes you're on like a fairly narrow multi-use trail, or sometimes you're on usually you're on a bike lane, and cycling side by side is pretty inconsiderate because then people can't really pass you. But with ActiveTO, it was like this big wide space, and people could cycle in gangs, and it was really easy, and it was a great feeling.
It's dill, isn't it?
It's fennel, actually.
Fennel. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I love fennel.
Yeah. And it's like a slightly unexpected turn with the smoked salmon. Really good.
I'm not really following a recipe here. I'm just throwing crap into a bowl and seeing.
Creative. We had some comments. Yes, OpenStreetTO.
Oh gosh.
Oh. That was almost more of a problem with ActiveStreet sometimes, because they were a little bit. They were not always telling people where the ActiveTO things were going to be. Yeah, but Sudoku says, I'd be fine with urban cycling, but I don't know the hand signals really. So, Chloe, you were saying if you don't know the hand signals, who should you ask?
Do a demonstration.
I was thinking I could, and there's only the three that you need, but I don't know if am I like opposite? Because I can't tell with this. If you see me, I might do it with the wrong hand.
Can even I can put
think
you
it
in
mirrors
like
you slightly.
This is my
so you
left
can actually
hand.
see your hand. Okay.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it's very
That
simple, and I'm sure others in the room know this too. But so this will be for a right turn. So sort of like you can almost imagine like this is your right turn, if you will, and straight out is left turn. So you're sort of pointing towards the left. And then I also really like this like down L for whenever you're about to stop. And no shade, cyclists in Toronto, but I know you don't use this one. Y'all just stop whatever the heck you want. So that's why I'm always with my hands on the brakes when there's someone in front of me. 3 seconds of distance, but I really like using this one, and I assume people behind me appreciate it, where they don't notice. One of the two.
Is that it? Because I always think like I know those, but are there more? But is that?
Oh, I'm sure there are more. Those are the main 3 that I know. Does anybody want to add?
I think I use the down one too sometimes, and I can remember I was stopping in the middle of this.
Do you want to demonstrate?
Because I was going to get out, and that was where my stop was. So I signaled. I was stopping, and I stopped, and some Yahoo male cyclist, I was like, "Don't stop in the middle of the bike lane." And I'm like, "That's a signal.
I have to stop."
Yeah. So people are not super familiar with them. Definitely. It's good. It's good to have. They're useful. It's important.
But it's CycleTO, is it? That I'm trying to remember. There's an organization in Toronto that educates people about this.
Yeah, CycleTO for sure. There might
it's
be
also and it's also important to have a bell, in my opinion. Like
it's illegal to not have one.
It's legally required. Yes.
Yeah, but you should be using it too.
And to use it.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna pop that up there. Yeah, we have CycleTO, which has they have a lot of resources in terms of like if you don't know things like the hand signals or the rules of the road or where you're allowed to go or you want maps and stuff like that. They are a really good resource for information of all kinds about cycling. Chris adds that the bell should go ring, ring.
It's true.
It's true.
So, Chloe, only one part of your story sounded fake to me, and that was when you were describing cycling in the winter in Toronto and being like, "And I'm warm." Like,
yeah,
I tried it. My hands like nearly fell off. Like,
okay, right.
I was so cold.
I'm so glad you brought that back up.
Yeah.
So you really have to get the right type of gloves. I can't really speak too much to that because Nadia will really like this. My best and favorite cycling gloves I found on the ground in Kensington Market. We can't all be so lucky. But yeah, and I've seen people have, with that, you probably want to figure out what's best for yourself. If you've ever seen, there's like bar mitts that go on the actual bars themselves. Ooh. And then if you're ever going to make your signal, you have to take your hand out of it. So that's not so great. But yeah, sometimes you'll double up maybe. But the hands and the feet are and I guess maybe the face too, are the main pieces to keep warm, but your core will be warm. As long as you're cycling.
Yeah, you need some gear. I mean, having grown up, I grew up in the Ottawa Valley before climate change. Toronto winters are like, you call this a winter most of the time. The cold weather, the way to deal with cold weather is bundle up for it, have the gear. But having said that, I don't cycle at all, let alone during the winter. So this is all talk coming from me. But I do know for a number of people who do. Yeah, and I would imagine that the movement would keep you warm. Chris has a very good question, which is, are those nasturtiums going into a vol au vent?
Of course they are. You know I love my edible flowers.
Yes. Where are the? Can we see them? Can you see them? Are they? Oh yeah,
orange. Yeah. I just tried a nasturtium. My aunt made me eat one out of her garden, and I was like, "This is really
they're good. They are strong." They're spicy. Yeah. They're like,
It's a good thing before the bees get to them, you can get some nectar out of them as well. Hey, it's actually melting up.
Yay! How long do they bake for?
15 to 20 minutes. I think there's 4 minutes left on the timer. I think we're gonna go closer to 20 on this. But everything is pretty much ready to fill them with. So.
Jared is stealing food from our bees.
Don't want the Canadian bees.
Oh my gosh. Let's see.
Have you ever considered having an oven camera too? I'm sorry to add more complication to this.
I have thought about it, like grabbing this camera and taking it over there, but everything outside the frames that you see is a gigantic mess, and I don't want to risk anybody seeing.
Big same.
When I carry it over there.
I know those feels.
Plus, it's like for this specifically, it would be difficult because it's hard to see through it if you've got a camera because it'll focus on the oven door and not the inside. But and if I open the oven, I'll lose the steam that's puffing them up, I think. Right, so I don't want to. Maybe if there's something else that's super oven important later on, I might try to do something.
Carry the camera. You could always like put your hand over the lens until you get to, you can like hide, conceal the rest of your apartment from us.
I'm trying to think.
Look at my stacks of books everywhere and whatever.
It's basically, it sounds like my apartment.
Even the Great British Bake Off, they often show inside the oven. So
yeah.
Sorry?
I'm thinking about it. If I'm thinking about it, I think even at the Great British Bake Off, I don't think they actually show inside the oven. I think it may be just too difficult.
I think you need a special camera to handle the.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they've definitely got cameras inside the ovens for the time-lapse stuff that they do.
A camera you can bake.
Yeah.
I feel like that exists though.
Yeah, I mean, they use them. I don't think I can afford one.
That's a really specific piece of kitchen equipment that doesn't have a lot of applications. Were we to monetize the stream and have a budget, maybe.
And then like the Nadia of 5 years from now will be like, I can't go to a yard sale anymore because there's so many oven cams.
And they're always missing pieces, but they don't tell you.
Jared Oven Camera Fund.
Exactly. Yeah. Like they take a very specific battery.
Etc.
I feel like there are other things Jared would rather have funded for his purchase, like designer accessories of various kinds.
But the baking white has really escalated its game because like what we're seeing is like the hand like getting these like delicious, incredibly beautiful raspberries, and then Jared eating them.
This is the first few times we did the stream, we only had the one camera, and this is just like such a game changer that we can actually see in detail the things that he's doing and look at raspberries. I now also want raspberries. Oh my goodness. I'm just going to switch back and ask something that I was curious about earlier. Dylan, you started a Substack. Tell us about that. Tell us what do you hope to accomplish with a newsletter? And also my feeling about Substack is that basically like blogs are back. We're just calling them newsletters now, but it's a blog. Come on.
Well, I mean, the thing is that like you don't have to people don't have to go to it. It goes to people. But it's interesting because I do write for Spaceball stuff, but the Substack, the reason I did it was, I took an MFA in creative nonfiction, and they were like, "Oh, you have to build your audience, and Substack's the way to do it." But that wasn't really the key thing. The key thing was, like, I thought about it, and I thought, like, first of all, it's only once a month, and it's short because I get so many newsletters, right? It's like, who's going to read a newsletter? It has to be short, entertaining, and not very frequent. But I thought it would be really fun. Like, I love chatting about the things I'm doing and stuff like that. And it would be really fun, and also like a really good little exercise in writing. I do, writing is one of the things I do. Usually I write like long pieces, and I have to do research, I have to think them through and stuff like that. But this is like short, but it has to be something that's interesting to a really wide variety of people, because people come to me from, they're my relatives, some of them are interested in history, some of them are interested in urbanism, some of them are interested in whatever, they follow me on Twitter or something. So it's like, how can I make all these different things I do interesting to people who it's not actually interesting to, and like keep it really short. And it's actually like, I thought it would be a really good exercise, and I thought it would be fun for people. And the first one was I really enjoyed doing it. And I think it's good, like it's something that I think people will enjoy, but also it's like something that's a good kind of way for me to, and I'm always like, someone once told me that I basically am full of fascinating but useless information that I like to share. And I thought, well, if I can find the other people in the world who are also interested in that, and then it's a way for me to share that. And especially, of course, we're not going to parties, we're not talking to friends, like we're not places where we can sort of share what we're doing and stuff like that. So it's also a little bit of ways to that as well. But yeah, I mean, I thought, this is a good way to stay connected with people, to connect with people who maybe don't know me, but kind of like the interesting kind of things I do, but also for me to be like, how can I tell my stories really well in a very short amount of space? And how can I really enjoy writing things for people that people will enjoy? As opposed, a lot of my writing is kind of serious. It's like, here's a big issue, and here's, my take on it, or something like that. And I kind of like, here's something fun that I hope that you'll find fun as well.
Yeah. I like this. This is relevant to my interests. I'm thinking of doing something similar, because I also am a person who has a lot of useless but interesting information, and also is just interested in a lot of disparate things. And I think that's part of the value of something like that, is when people, it gives you something to point to, and people are like, well, like, what's your whole thing? What are you interested in? And you're like, well, because for you, it's like you have this whole spacing urbanism thing, but then your degree is in like Renaissance history, and it's sort of like, you have the like nonfiction writing, and and if you want to kind of like put everything in a place that you can point people to and say, this is, perhaps connections will arise between these things, but these are all the things that constitute what I'm interested in.
And also just the act of writing it. Sometimes I'm writing it, and then I'm kind of in my like, like sort of just my typical mode, and I'm like, that's really boring. And I start writing, I'm like, here's a really new way of thinking about it, or a new way. It's also a little more personal, so it kind of opens up that space. So already, like, I'm like, oh, I'm thinking of new ways of thinking about the stuff I write, right? Because I'm like, I have to think about, this disparate range of people. And so that's great for me too, right? Like, it kind of like opens up my own brain, and I'm like, and it can be a little bit, so also like, I write for the spacing blog, but there's a lot of really unpleasant commenters out there. And a Substack is like, I don't really think people are going to subscribe in order to troll me, right? Like, who would do that? And if they do, I can always unsubscribe them. So, so I feel like it's something where I can be a little more open and personal, and not worry about whether someone's like, oh, you said this is stupid, like whatever, right? So it feels a little more freedom that way. It's like, it's somewhat public, but it's not, it's not as public. I mean, it's out there
Yeah.
on spot, but people can't comment, I think, on Substack.
The commenting thing is really key. Yeah.
Yeah,
This
like,
is-
so, you know, they can send me an email if they want to, and if they want to be abusive, they can, but like then I'll unsubscribe them, and you know, they can go off. And so yeah, like it's a little less, it feels a little less self-conscious.
Yeah.
More freedom. So anyway,
Oh,
we'll see how it goes.
does that mean, Jared, does that peeping sound mean that they're done?
It means
Are
the
they done?
timer's going off.
Suspense.
He just went in there with no mid on. What's going? Don't burn yourself.
I'm not grabbing.
I don't know what
are you
you're doing in there.
You're so alarmed.
We can't see. We don't have an oven cam.
That's
Yeah,
right.
That's right.
I'm prodding them with my finger.
Okay. So they're not that hot. Oh, here they come.
Oh.
Are they puffy?
Just
They are puffy.
Yeah.
I think they're pretty pale, but I think they are actually done.
yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, they're
Those
not
look
supposed to be
so
dark brown or
special.
anything.
Actually, they
You
are
gonna
too
put them
hot
back
to
in?
grab. They're not too hot to prod.
Prod. Are you gonna put them back in the oven, or you're thinking they're done? Oh, they poofed.
They did. I'm very happy they did. They poofed a little too much actually in the middle. It's going to be hard to fill them. It's going to be like a little teaspoon, if that, of filling.
Well, there you go. You were worried they were going to poof it all, and they have poofed beyond expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I think they should be darker, but I don't know.
You don't want to overdo it. I feel like when I've seen vol au vent's puff pastry, it's often fairly light in color. What do they look like underneath? Are they dark on the bottom?
They're brown on the bottom, yeah.
Yeah,
which
there
is
you
what I
go.
was worried about.
Right.
I really want to. I'm gonna leave them out.
There we go. Yeah.
I will just make more later and cook them for longer if I think this is an issue.
Hey, we're coming up. You have about like 10, 15 minutes left. We usually like go a little over, but not a whole lot over. But it looks like you're actually like approaching a place where you can fill the vol au vents. And once again, you will in fact have something to show for us by the end of the stream. So this is very exciting. But I want to also
cool them off for a minute.
Okay.
And then
that's a good idea.
Fill them.
Also, I want to ask you something, because this is an interesting, I think, Dylan, you're raising an interesting point with the whole, it's like that you can maybe like cut back on the toxic commenting culture by creating something that doesn't have a comment section that people would actually have to write you and take the effort to do so if they want to, be abusive. And yeah, I'm wondering if that's sort of like, how do you guys in general feel? Do you think like blogs are ready for a comeback? Would you read blogs? Are you interested in blogs? I feel like, and I want to actually ask Jared about this, because Jared is on Twitter. Jared's like more of a tweeter than many people I know. Has a substantial following of people on Twitter. Which is cool, and you sort of like have adapted, like that's your medium. You get these, you say things in whatever it is, 280 characters or whatever. But do you ever want to work with a longer form? Do you ever feel like there's the mass of Twitter is toxic and overwhelming? You've had pretty good luck actually with your public, as it were, not being jerks to you.
Yeah, I mean sometimes when something, if you have a following of any size, they kind of get to know you or whatever, and not just on Twitter, but like any medium. But it's sometimes if something gets beyond that, then people who don't know you or parasocially know you can get weird about things. Like there have been, like, I talk about fashion on Twitter a lot, and I think a lot of people follow me for that, and that's fine. But if it gets beyond that, invariably somebody will be like, well, why do we care about this? It's just clothes. And I'm like, you don't have to pay attention to me. I'm just sitting here Like it's like oh, or things like, oh well, nobody would ever wear that. And it's like, well, of course not. That's not what it's for in this context.
Yeah.
And then it gets annoying. But I think one way that I've avoided having a ton of angry commenters coming after me for a lot of different stuff, and this is just like, because that's not what I want my Twitter to be, is by like avoiding tweeting about political things unless there's an action item.
Mm-hmm.
Like not just being like, oh, well, the abortion bill in Texas is bad, but being like, it's bad, here's a place you can donate or whatever. And then I'm not just spouting an opinion, I'm offering people something to do. And it also cuts down on me just needlessly spouting doom about stuff.
Because the internet needs more of that.
Yeah, like there's a ton of stuff I'm really mad about right now, but if I'm just sitting there yelling about it, all I'm doing is yelling about it.
Sorry, cat cam.
Oh, a cat.
Which little buddy is this?
This is Bugsy.
Bugsy! Oh my goodness. Look at his face.
He's been watching the camera from the just off stage left for a while, but he decided to make an appearance.
Cat.
He is so good. I have to tell you that he this is a digression for the politics, but I'll like make it super fast. So okay, so it's now like sweater weather in September, which means it's also fluffy blanket weather for kitties, which means that Bugsy is very, very happy and is doing his little dance all the time.
What, eating paws?
Yes, exactly. He's doing the kneading paws. So he was doing the kneading paws, and then he sort of loafed himself, and then I burritoed him, and then he disappeared, and he was just like gone. And then there was just these little paws, and then there was like his tail was sticking out the back because he didn't know, and it was delicious. Anyway, so now he's on my lap.
So many food words in that cat story, appropriate for this stream.
Back to Twitter.
Goodness, assembly is happening. Is it?
This is one of the custard ones. My goal was to have like a nice space, like a garnish with like a raspberry and some other stuff. So, but there's not that space.
They're too small.
So, I'm gonna throw.
Cats know about their tails. Hello, Bugsy. Ooh!
Wow!
I still would eat the heck out of that.
Oh, I need a spoon for that. Ugh.
So is
normally
it just
I have everything, all the tools laid out, and I missed some of them this time. So.
They is it just that they puffed up so much that there isn't a they do
they puffed up and they kind of like puffed inward, and the center came up even though it shouldn't have.
This is even more so than usual. I really wish I could eat these. Like every time we do this stream, I want to be there and eat what you're making. But these are like, basically like, you know, those things, if they ask you like, what if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be? And for me, it would be hors d'oeuvres. It would be like the little plates that they bring out at parties. Like just keep bringing them out. I'd be happy.
Oh, hors d'oeuvres are great.
That's the smartest answer I've ever heard, because hors d'oeuvres can be anything as long
as
they're
anything. Oh, Krista says you can squish the bottom of it to fit more in. That's what I always do. So squish
I'll
away.
do that with the next two.
Okay.
Once I get this.
Hold them up to the. Are they ready to?
I'm not done yet. No.
Okay.
It's caviar time.
Wait, how did that happen? Wait.
Oh.
We lost the camera.
We lost pastry camera.
Jared.
Oh.
We lost. Oh.
Weird. Well, I'll get it back in a second once I get this.
Okay. Yeah.
Open. The funny thing about hors d'oeuvres is that you never think that they count as like a full meal. But if you're in a place where there's a lot of hors d'oeuvres enough, like you actually eat a full meal. But it's because they're so small, you're like, well, that's not actually the full meal yet. That's what I always find.
Yes.
But
one more.
Also, there's the whole trick of like placement in a party where there's hors d'oeuvres, so that you know you place yourself where they're coming out, so that you can grab them. You know.
Yes. Yes.
As opposed to being on the other side of the room where they're all gone by the time the waiter gets to you.
Yeah, you figure out where the door to the kitchen is, exactly.
And
pretty much number one goal at any party. But haven't had a lot of that opportunity
It's only
lately.
old hors d'oeuvres that don't actually feel like a meal. That's grad school.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't know why I can't get this jar open.
What is it the roe?
It's the roe. It's going to be such a nice little garnish, and it's not cooperating.
Oh. These little like jars. Why are they like that?
I learned a cool trick with jars is if you use a can opener, like one of the beer can openers, and you use on the side, then you can like, if you tweak it enough, you'll like break the seal, and then you can
break the seal.
But it does
be risky with a plastic jar top, though.
Yeah.
Jared, use your meat paw.
It does mean that the top doesn't work very well after that. So
Krista
I have
says
delicate artist hands.
That's also another thing that I do is the rubber glove trick.
Yeah, for me it's an elastic band, but same thing.
Jared, who's now
Jared?
Jared. Oh, very good. Very good.
I was thinking that there was a pun there with like jar ed, like how do you open a jar?
And that's another good one. Put it under hot water. Get it?
We did it.
Oh, we got it!
Pull it up to the camera since we
were just adding drama for one
right.
final unexpected victory
That's
at the end of this meal.
It's like the Great British Bake Off would always be something at the end where you're like trying to solve and
yes,
sort off just in time.
With the timer running.
Baker, you have how many minutes? Now do you have to announce?
Oh no! Well, we are at, according to for some reason, my phone and my computer are on slightly different times. We're at 6 o'clock now. I don't mind. We often go over by like 10 or 15.
Don't let it back in yet.
Okay. Oh, all right.
It's going to be a hideous view of my.
I see. I'm not seeing it yet in the. Oh, here we are. Okay.
Don't let it in yet. Let me get it back to
I
work.
know. Your hands.
Okay.
Hands. Oh yeah, it looks good. Looks good now. Here we go.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Let's. Yeah. This is the stuff. Look at that. Oh, beautiful. Yes.
I love the bright colors that you're working with.
Yeah, I think that's what's making it look so appetizing.
So here are the two. I will continue to make more, but these are the.
Very, very impressive.
Aesthetic TM.
There we go. It's hard. I'm just like doing this in a weird mirror, trying to get it centered. But there we go.
Oh, very nice.
Do you want to? Of course, the other thing that has to happen now is you have to eat one of each.
Oh, I'm gonna
tell us. Okay, but that sounds so enthusiastic. There we go.
You missed it.
Aw.
Studio trickery.
Yeah, actually, the pastry is a little undercooked.
Okay. Well, you just did one batch. You could do more batches and make them darker.
Oh, I've got way more. I've got so much more.
Yeah. Now you know. Was that which one was that?
What was the salmon one? I'm sorry.
That's all right. How is the balance of salmon and fennel and cream cheese?
It's good. It's a little more pastry than, like a lot more pastry than filling. So.
Well, now you know the next time you make the kites, you'll make them like wider, flatter.
Bigger. I'm also going to try Krista's suggestion of like tamping down the center.
Yeah.
So.
That's the raspberry?
Yep.
Okay, here you go.
They're messy.
And Jared, I think you used like real vanilla bean for the custard. Is that right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, this looks so good.
Always uses real vanilla bean.
So fancy. So
sorry, I'm new here.
Well, that was really good too. So I'm going to make more of them.
Chris says, and now the forbidden rest. Forbidden vol au vents.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, technically we're kind of done here, but we don't have to chop right off. Does anyone, we were talking about blogs, anyone have closing thoughts about blogs or anything else that we have be discussing, or vol au vents?
I should run off, but I was just thinking how neat it is the way writing has become again for us a chance to sort of center ourselves and figure out what we think about things. Like, it's such a neat wisdom tool. or a way of processing what's been happening. And I just think it's really admirable and cool. Yeah. So good job. Yeah.
Good. Yes. Do you have a blog or a social media or something that we can?
Oh, I do not. I had a live journal ages ago, and I've gotten a little bit back into short story writing, but I have not been sharing anything. So
okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. But I do have a Boise.
Oh my goodness. Look at that.
Who's very lovely. So Bugsy and I will clear off, but it's been such a slice. And yeah, thanks very much.
It's great to see you. Thanks for telling us about the
wonderful to meet you guys.
Bye. Jared is just eating things to make me jealous. Krista says, take a bus down to my house with some of those so we can have a yard picnic. I wish there was a bus, a high-speed, impossible bus, cross-border, cross-continental puff pastry delivering bus.
Like on a plane tomorrow. I'll take all of us to Krista, and then I'll hop on a plane for Toronto.
Oh man, someday we'll do like a kitchen party where we're both actually in the same kitchen. It will be magnificent, and I will get to eat things. But Dylan and Chloe, it has been so nice to have you on and to hear you encourage us to get out there and walk and cycle, which is, I am now thinking, because I was thinking I didn't, yet again, the summer went by and I didn't get into cycling, but, just because the summer is over, as you say, doesn't mean cycling is over. So,
you know where to find me, Nadia. We'll go for a bike ride anytime you want.
Well, and the best way to be taught is by someone who's gone through the same, like doing it again as an adult. So
yeah. Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think I have to get some. I want to start by. We have bike share bikes in Toronto, so I want to start by maybe half an hour at a time, trying it out, and maybe get some people together, so it's not just me wobbling around on a bike going, I know how to do this. See, I did cycle when I was a little kid, but I learned to cycle in my small town where there was never any traffic on the street, and we could just ride our bikes around the block a lot. So, Jared, any closing thoughts for the people before we end the broadcast about the vol-au-vents? Would you recommend people try vol-au-vents at home, try making these puff pastry? How hard is it? He's chewing. I asked him a question at exactly the wrong time. Yeah. We'll just look at the pretty, lovely vol-au-vents.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. I don't know that I would, if I were going to make these for an actual gathering, I would just buy the pastry,
Yeah.
But it's a fun process. It's fun to make little, cute little pastries and fill them. Yeah.
Yeah, it looked crafty. So do you feel like they taste notably better than store-bought puff pastry, or it was more just an interesting process, but not really necessary for an improvement?
I mean, there's a difference in taste, but I don't know that it would be worth the time commitment necessarily.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Not for something fiddly like this. If I were going to make maybe a beef Wellington or something with a lot of puff pastry, then it might be more
right. Yeah, a pie sort of thing.
I might put in the time to make the pastry in that case, but when it's this and it takes so long to just shape them and then fill them, then I don't know if I would, but who knows?
Well, thanks again also to all of the people who are watching this live and who might be watching this later on YouTube. I'm trying to find where I put it, and I just wanted to say that, yes, here we go. A reminder that megaphonic.fm is not just live streams. It's also a collection of fancy little podcasts, which you can find by going to megaphonic.fm and poking around. We have podcasts on books and pop culture and Canadian horror movies and lots of things. I'm sure there will be something there that you will find interesting. Lots of things to interest various people. And we will be doing another kitchen party. I think that the tentative plan is to Actually, I think we have at least one guest scheduled. So the plan is October 30th.
It better not be tentative at this point.
Honestly say we have a plan for October 30th to do a spooky Halloweenish kind of kitchen party. So if you have ideas for food, I think Jared hasn't completely nailed one down yet, but he's tossed out some good possibilities. So we'll see. Yeah. And again, thanks again for joining us. Hope to see you again. Ooh, baking. Candy corn. Oh yeah, that's definitely what you're gonna make, is candy corn. No. No,
sorry.
Oh, the nasturtiums. This is the one thing we have to see, I think, before we leave, is the nasturtium garnish. Are those going on the raspberries?
Yeah.
Yes. So pretty, so floral.
I had thought they were going to be bigger and I could put like more of a flower on there. But
well, the next batch. Now you know.
Yeah.
You have so much puff pastry. You can
have so much puff pastry.
Experiment. Look at it. Hold it up to the camera. No, you're eating it.
This is what I do at the end of the stream. I just sit here and eat everything. I mean,
yeah. I mean, fair enough. You just cooked it for 2 hours. So.
Just
hold on. We gotta.
Oh,
yeah, there we go. Look at that. Look at that beautiful thing. That is sculpture right there. That is edible sculpture.
And you can see it does have the layers.
Right, Suzuki wants you to plate the next new improved batch 2.0 and show them on Twitter. So.
Yeah, I'm gonna make the rest of the pastry and cook it for longer, and it'll be better. And then I'll take a glamour shot for everybody.
Yay! Okay, well, we're gonna end the broadcast. Guests on the Dylan and Chloe, you don't have to take off just yet, but we will no longer be live. Thanks again, everyone, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for having me.